So I was browsing around YouTube and I saw an interesting video where somebody used Adobe XD to create an icon. And I thought I'd give it a shot and try to replicate, or not try to replicate that icon, but try to replicate the feet rather. And it actually turns out that I was able to create something that was more complex than what was created in the video by a professional graphic designer. And I wanted to show how I did it. So I've got Adobe XD here open on Windows. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add an artboard. So I'm going to click on this icon over here for an artboard. And for this one, it doesn't matter what the dimensions of the artboard are. So I'll just pick this web 1280. I'm going to work with the grid. That's very, very important. And so I'll right click and I'll click Show Square Grid down here. Now I'm going to zoom in a little bit so I can see what's going on. Notice that the square size for the grid is 8. That's fine for right now. There are many different ways that you could customize this. But the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start off by getting a rectangle here. And I'm just going to go ahead and draw the rectangle out anyway for right now because I want to change the dimensions of it manually. And I want this to be 48 by 160. And I'm going to drag that to where it's aligned to the grid. And I'm actually going to put that more like in the middle. I'm going to duplicate it, so Control and paste, or Command, or copy and paste rather. And I'm going to duplicate it, and I'll put the duplicate over to the side. Now then what I'm going to do is I'm going to double click the original. And what this does is this puts me into an editing mode. And what it allows me to do is it allows me to add, notice that when I move my cursor over onto the edge, it puts this pin icon with a blue point. And that's going to allow me to add new points to the shape. So I'm going to go down halfway, which would be 80 pixels. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 here. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So now I'm going to take the left one. I'm going to drag it one square or 8 pixels to the left. And I'm going to do the same thing with the other one, dragging it 8 pixels, except dragging it 8 pixels to the right. Then I'm going to double click each of them, which will add these handles, which will make them curved. Now I could play with the curve, but actually for right now, that's actually going to be plenty. All right, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this guy over here, and I'm going to double click on him, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to add these 2 points in. So this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag this point in by 1. I'm going to drag this one out by 2, however. And then I'm going to go up here to the top. I'm going to drag this one in by 1 and do the same thing at the bottom. And then I'll double click on these and make them curves. Now I'll drag this over next to the other one and see how these fit together. Now I'm going to take this, I'm going to copy it, double click, pull this one in, pull this one out, and one more time, pull this in. Now I want to bring this one over, but notice how it's not exactly lined up. It's narrower here in the middle than it is at the top. So just double click and drag this point over here and this point over here. Great. Now I want to make this symmetrical. So I will copy this and I'll rotate it 180 degrees and I'll drag it into place. And I'll do the same thing with this one. All right. Now I'm going to select all of them. I'm going to hit Control G to group. And I'm going to change the shape. I want this to now actually be 120 pixels wide. Then what I'll do is I'll remove the border and change the fill to solid black. And what we have here is a shape that looks something like a barrel. And that's what I was aiming for. I'm going to drag this into the center. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Now I'm going to create a new rectangle. And it's going to be 2 squares tall. And I'm going to get rid of the border on it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag it down to where it's 4 squares from the top. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Then I'm going to copy and paste it, and I'll drag that duplicate down to where it's 4 squares from the top. Then what I'll do is I'll select the barrel or the group and that new square, and then what I'll do is I'll hit subtract. And notice what it did is it removed the part that the new square was covering, and I'm going to do the same thing on the bottom. All right, now I'm going to turn off the grid, and you can see we've got something here that looks like kind of a silhouette of a barrel. I'm going to add some text to it. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select my text tool. I'll click. The text that I'm going to use is called Javanese text, and I'm going to use it size 16. And the name of this is going to be called Conference Barrel. This is my imaginary demo app for all of my talks. And I'm just going to drag it, and it doesn't have a logo yet, so I guess it needs one. And I'll drag this in here. I'm going to make this centered. I'll copy and paste it and drag it down to the bottom and change the text down here to barrel. And that's it. That's how to quickly create a logo inside of Adobe XD.